Welcome to the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast.
What happens when you miscommunicate? You begin to put up walls, you begin to move back, pull away, and then over time, relationship expectations go down. You begin to not expect much and just kind of live with it. I took this executive team recently through this exercise. I said, think about your spouse and what they tend to communicate and what do you receive? And 8 out of 8 missed it. My point was, how many people are missing it every single day? Every communication has an expectation and every expectation has a code. Solve the code, solve the relationship.
That's Jeremie Kubiceck. He's helped thousands of leaders become more relationally intelligent as co-founder of Giant. Some of the largest companies in the world incorporate Jeremie's insights and best-selling books to enhance their communication. Today, he's sharing how to put an end to misunderstandings using the tools in his book, The Communication Code. So you'll learn 1, the root of every misunderstanding, 2, the simple trick to consistently meeting people's expectations, and 3, how to repair damaged relationships. I'm Pete Makaitis. This is How to Be Awesome at Your Job. And now, here's Jeremie. Jeremie, welcome back to How to Be Awesome at Your Job.
So good to be here. Always good to be with you, Pete.
Well, I want to hear about your book, The Communication Code. You've done a lot of research on humans relating, communicating, interacting. Any particularly noteworthy discoveries or learnings you've had about all this lately?
Yes, I do. In fact, we basically have a tool that we've used for 8 years in our Giant business, our community. But I've just done a lot of research around the idea of why do people miscommunicate? And then how does miscommunication affect relationships? And what does it actually do? And so the big aha that Steve Cochran and I had in this is every communication has an expectation attached to it.
Yeah.
And every expectation has a code word, a clue. And if you can figure out the code word of what the other person is inferring or expecting, you'll unlock that communication. That transmission of communication will get unlocked. And when that happens over and over again, you'll build healthier relationships, you'll build more camaraderie, you'll lower miscommunication, which will impact the other person. And so if you know, how many people have relationships in their life, right?
I do.
Yeah, everyone. And how many want those to be the best they possibly can be? Well, if that's the case, wouldn't it be good if you knew what the code words were? And wouldn't it be great if you could figure them out before they told you, or the other person could tell you what the code word is? And that's what we figured out. We solved. We're like, oh my goodness, there's 5 code words. If you figure out those 5 code words, it will unlock that communication, that one transmission of communication, which could then unlock the relationship.
That's so cool. And what's coming to mind for me is I remember I had a really sweet woman and mentor. Her name is Marilyn Holt. Shout out to Marilyn. And she just thought it would be kind of fun to get some students together to meet up with this billionaire friend of hers. She just thought, oh, they could probably learn some things from him, have some fun. She was like, hey, Ron, I think that might be great to get some students that I'm working with together to meet with you. And so he just said immediately, what do they want? And she said, Ron, I'm sorry. You probably have everybody always wanting something from you. We just thought it'd be fun to get together and see a little bit about your story and your journey and have a cool experience for these kids. Like, oh, so he was like surprised, like, okay, yeah, let's do that. Because we have this expectation, which is formed by any number of things. And part of it could just be what most people tend to want when a stranger is calling up the billionaire.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's probably what these guys want too, is something in the world of what I could do for them with, I don't know, jobs or internships or investments or something.
And in our case, we figured out the really hard way. Steve Cochran, who's my business partner, he's British. I was in London. We were meeting. I had just celebrated closing a strategic partnership. It was a pretty sizable partnership, and I was super excited about it. And I'm like, dude, we got to get a lunch. I've got so much to share. That was a code. That was a clue of like, I want to celebrate. We get to lunch, and I start sharing the details of what I was excited about. And again, I'm expecting celebration, high five. Let's have a great time. Let's celebrate in this for a minute. And he begins to critique. And the critique was, well, why did you do it that way? That's not how you said we were going to do it. And well, what about this? And didn't they provide this? And haven't you? And I start turning green and red, hulking out. And all of a sudden I'm like, what are you doing? Why can't we just celebrate? And I freak out. And he's like, why didn't you tell me you wanted to celebrate? I'm like, wasn't it obvious I wanted to celebrate? And what we realized was in this whole encounter that Steve's tendency is to critique in the form of collaboration. He wants to collaborate, but it can come across as critique. My aha was I wanted to celebrate, or I wanted you to at least clarify beforehand. And that was the game that we were playing. I was trying to express my celebration, and he was bringing his full critique. And we missed. And we realized, oh my goodness, how many times does that happen? So I took this executive team recently through this exercise. I go, okay, they're all married. I said, think about your spouse and what they tend to communicate. And what do you receive? And then what do you communicate? And what do they receive? And 8 out of 8 missed it. They wanted different things. I want care, or I want you to clarify. What do you get? I get critique or collaboration. I want collaboration and celebration, but I only get care, and I don't really need that. In each case, they missed. So then I reversed it and I said, what about you? What do you tend to do to them? And what does your spouse want? And only 7 out of 8 were wrong. One of them got it right. My point was, how many people are missing it every single day? So what happens when you miscommunicate? You begin to put up walls. You begin to move back, pull away. You begin to infer, oh yeah, Pete, that's just how he is. And then we work around people because we know how they're going to respond. And then over time, relationship expectations go down. You begin to not expect much and just kind of live with it.
Yeah. It's funny how we do make these assumptions. Isn't it obvious I wanted to celebrate? And it's obvious in our own minds. And yet we can get it wrong all the time. So lay it on us. We've got 5 flavors here. Each of them starts with the letter C. Can you start by giving us what are those 5 C's?
Yep. So celebrate is the desire to express what you're excited about. Care is the need for wanting to make sure that you're taken care of. And clarity is really to clarify, is this what you're saying, Pete? Let me make sure before I go another direction. Let me make sure that I understand what you're saying. And then collaborate is the idea that you want me to help you. We want to work on this together. And then critique is you're going to hold something up. I'm going to make it better. I'm going to show you where it's wrong so that it can be right. So if you think about those 5, that most of our interactions, the expectations are tied to those. So if I'm in the like Steve example, I wanted to celebrate and I wanted him to either clarify. But he said, you didn't tell me. Why didn't you just tell me? And I'm like, why didn't you just get it? It was obvious. So in this case, now I will go to someone, like in that case, I would say this, hey, Steve, I am so excited. I want to celebrate a few things. So today is all about celebration. But then if you don't fully get it, clarify. Ask me any questions. That'd be awesome. And I've given him 2 codes, but the main one is I'm here to celebrate. Or he might come to me, as he does often, and goes, hey, Jeremie, I want to collaborate. I really value your input on such and such. And I know you care for me. I'm not really here to celebrate. You can clarify if you want, but I really want to collaborate. Cool. Got it. So now I've been given the open door. I've been given the code word. And so I should be able to meet expectations. When we don't meet expectations, that's when all friction comes into relationships.
Yeah, this is good. And so then collaboration, it seems like I guess they're all pretty big categories. Collaboration seems like just about any time we're trying to do a thing, it would fall into the collaboration zone. Like I want to sell you something, or I want to buy something from you, or I want to figure a thing out together. Then all that's in the collaboration zone.
That's right. It doesn't have to be so rhythmic where you have to say it every single time. You get good at it over time. I can figure out expectations by even asking a few clarifying questions, I can figure out what they need. But, sometimes with my wife, we're set in a hot tub and we'll talk at night and it'll be like, so what do you need tonight? And she goes like, I just need you to listen. That's care. Got it. That means she doesn't need my critique. She doesn't need any collaboration. She doesn't want to celebrate. She just wants me to listen. That's care. So showing her care is different. Now, her showing me care might be a little different than hers. I need to talk out loud. So I need her to listen in a different way. But so there's nuances to it, but we get the gist of it. So, but to start out, if you and I are in a meeting, you're like, hey, Jeremie, I really trust you. I'm almost finished with this presentation. Critique it, man. Blow holes in it so that I can make this really, really tight. Great. You gave me the communication code to know what to do.
And it is so handy when you know. It's funny. I think critique is among the most dangerous. It's sort of like, I am not looking for a critique. And we've had some other guests say that one of the best things you can do when you're offering feedback is to first ask for permission to provide some feedback. Or I guess you're getting clarification there. It's like, I've got some ideas for improvement. Would you like for me to share them? And then for the other person who really has permission to say, not today, really not in the headspace for that. But other days you are. And it can be so valuable. Like when you're really wide open for it, it's so huge. I'm thinking about, I was listening to Mr. Beast, the famous YouTuber, as to how he got so huge. And he said, I had a number of friends and we would always just get together. We would just roast each other's videos. I like the use of the word roast because a roast is sort of like a funny thing. Comedians do a roast. So it almost sounds fun and celebratory. And yet what it consists of is being told all of the things you're doing wrong in your videos and how you could make them much better. And so you're right. If you're not feeling that, you'll get way mad. You'll get way mad at that person. Like, hey, shut up, jerk. I'm out of here.
It's not helpful. Right. Because what happens is critique is different than being critical. Critical is when it's negative. So you're against me. Well, if we've done communication really well, if we've used the communication code, we've built up really good communication, expectations are being met. That means I trust you. I know that you're for me. You're not against me. If I know that you're for me, I'm probably going to be more open to your critique than if I feel that you're against me, it's going to feel like you're critical and you're always critical. So constructive criticism, those words don't go together. It also, though, plays out to different personality types. So we have something, I think last time I shared on the 5 voices, which is our personality system that is so scalable and potent, but we have thinkers and feelers. Well, thinkers, the thinker voices are going to be pioneers and guardians. They're going to be way more open to critique than the feelers, the nurturers, the connectors, some of the creatives, because they live in logic and they live in just the thinking mindset. So they're fine. Sure. Shoot holes in it. So they go, hey, what do you think of my idea, Pete? And they shoot a hole in it. And they go, okay, great. And they leave and then they come back. What do you think now? Oh, it's great. Perfect. Thank you. The feelers take an idea and they go, hey, Pete, what do you think of my idea? And they put it right over their heart. And all of a sudden you shoot at it and then there's blood. And they're like, oh, dude, why'd you put it over your heart? Oh, what were you thinking? Move it. Right. And so the feelers have a harder time, and I'm one, have a harder time. We have a harder time with anything that feels negative towards us. So that means we have to really build up the right rapport, the right relational trust with another person. And that takes time. And that's what we've done is we've just built tools that make leaders more relationally intelligent so that they can not miss, they can actually hit, what the expectations of the other person are.
All right. Well, Jeremie, this is sort of your knack is you present something. It's simple. It's sensible. It's like, yes, of course. I should just do that and we'll all be better off. Cool. Tell us, Jeremie, what are some of like the nuances or the tricky parts or the sticking points? Like, it sounds easy enough. How about we all just go do this, declare what C we're looking for? Where do things go wrong?
Yeah, it goes wrong because you have to think about your past. Every single person has a past with you. So what's it been like on the other side of you for the last 5 years or the last 25 years? So it's one thing if you're like, oh, great, figured out a new technique. Here we go. And I start practicing it on someone. Like, well, wait, they've experienced you in a negative power test. They've experienced your domination where you brought low support and high challenge to them. You've been critiquing them for 15 years. You can't just change overnight. You actually have to go through a process of like, oh my gosh, Pete, I've read this book and I think I've realized I've been dominating. I didn't mean to. I've been critiquing the entire time. I'm so sorry. Stage 1. Stage 2 is I'm going to practice the communication code, but you're going to have to do it for a long time for them to realize this is the new norm. And because if you're in a negative power, if you're in a negative situation with someone, then it's been an abuse of power, the abuse of your personality, abuse of your communication style. And that's worn the other person out, and maybe their walls are so high. So you got to let them drop their walls a little bit so they'll actually begin to trust you again. That's the nuance that people have to realize. If they want to experience true relational change, then they have to go back in the past and clean it up, which can be hard.
Could you give us maybe a sample of what that conversation might sound like in practice?
Yeah. So Pete, man, dude, I've been reading this concept called the communication code. And I think I've realized in the first 2 chapters, it talked all about the negative power test. I think sometimes my personality is so overbearing that I feel like I probably don't give you the chance to breathe or talk. Or I think I've noticed also that you probably feel my critique more than you feel my celebration. Is that true? And then I give you a chance to share it. And if you're like, oh yeah, that's it. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, man. I probably didn't realize that was just naturally happening. So if you'll give me a chance, I'm just going to work on some things. So I'm going to ask you a question whenever we get together. What do you need right now? Do you want celebration? Do you want care? Do you want clarity? And then I'm going to start there. If you want me to collaborate or critique, I'll let you tell me. But I'm going to try to work on clarifying first or celebrating a little bit, even though I'm not very good at it. That's an example.
All right. So yeah, that seems like it'd be lovely to hear on the receiving end of that. I mean, you might be met with some skepticism, like, okay, Jeremie, we'll see how long this lasts until you're on to your next flavor of the month. So you might get some skepticism, but I have a hard time imagining a strong negative reaction. There's a scene from Brooklyn Nine-Nine, which cracks me up, where they get an amazing new captain that they're skeptical of. And they say, oh, she wants to meet with us and talk about our goals and our strengths. Like, what's she up to? It can't be good. And so, that makes me chuckle in the professional development space.
Yeah.
But tell us, how are some ways that might be perceived negatively that we should be on the lookout for?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's what you said. It's being consistent. Consistency is the key to great leadership. If you're consistent and people know this isn't a flavor of the month, this is something that you're doing, and then you're using the language consistently, then you're going to probably work around it. We use language and tools at Giant that get embedded in the water system. And then over time, it creates common objective language and versus subjectivity. And that common objective language is a real source of help. So that's what we've experienced. It's if you can do that really well, just by practicing, that's it. Just keep being consistent. And then over time, it will break the other person down. And then they'll start using the language. And it's not crazy, right? We're saying people have expectations.
Yeah.
What if you met their expectations? We'll see how that relationship will change.
All right. Well, I'm curious then, if folks feel a little weird using the lingo, it's like, Jeremie, do I have to use the words care, celebration, collaboration, critique, and clarification? It doesn't feel like me. Are there any ways you recommend flexing or adapting it?
Yeah. So the way that I do it now. I'll meet with somebody and they haven't read the communication code or they don't know the language. I'll just ask hey, can I ask you a few clarification questions? If I feel like it needs to. And they're like, yeah, sure. Great. So in this case, are you saying this or this? Because if you're Like, I want to know, do you want me to, like, I'm ready to celebrate, or are you looking for me to collaborate? It's so you can naturally weave it in, almost like a decision tree. Are we going to go left? Or are we going to go right? So by weaving it in naturally, it doesn't have to be crazy. If you sense someone just needs you to listen, you don't have to say, do you need me to care? You can just say, hey, do you just want me to listen? Would that be the most helpful? Yeah, be great. Because you have to train other people because they're not used to sharing expectations either. Think of it. Most of us don't know how to share our own expectations. So you have to give expectation and you have to pull expectation. And that's ultimately what we're trying to get people to do.
Now, I'm curious, when you mentioned one flavor of caring is listening, are there a few core subtypes that you might, or subcategories you might put into each of these?
It's based on personality. So like a pioneer, which is a thinker, they would be someone like Myers-Briggs and ENTJ. They're very type A driven. Care for that person might mean that you're listening to them and being a sounding board and giving them a chance to vent or share their frustration. It's getting the poison out so they don't blow someone else up. That's actually showing care. Very different than to a nurturer who they want you to care for the things they care about. It's just the idea of understanding care. In the book, I go through each chapter. So care, if you don't know how to care, and here's all the nuances, here's all the subparts of care. The same with celebration. If you don't know how to celebrate, what is celebration? What's it not? It's not people looking for a parade. Just teaching people how to do these things that aren't natural.
I'd love to get your hot take on sort of a couple of these details in terms of what is something that's really high impact for folks and that they tend to get wrong a lot.
It's interesting. And I think if you're listening to this, you probably know this too. It's almost like this Brooklyn Nine-Nine thing. There's a cynicism that's in culture. And when people hear buzzwords like, oh, he wants to celebrate. Oh, what's he want? Does he want us to throw? And they go off on these long tangential misnomers. And it's like, no, the guy wanted to high five. So here's what we realize. There's a custom communication code. There's a general communication code. I want to celebrate or care or whatever. But when I'm talking directly to Steve, for instance, and he's talking to me, I can now tell him exactly what I want. I want, Steve, whenever we meet, I want some care because you live across the pond. It can feel transactional if we're only doing Zoom. Let's text each other like, how was the weekend? How's your sports teams? It's just that we've been business partners for 10 years. So let's make sure there's some camaraderie. That's showing care for me. Okay. Then I want to be able to celebrate. But when I celebrate, I don't want to celebrate me. I want to celebrate us. So it's nuance. It's specific of each word. I want to celebrate the whole dream team, the Avengers we put together. I'm not looking for personal celebration. That's the way I roll. So that's what it means to me. And then third and fourth and fifth. He did the same thing. He goes, Jeremie, I want to collaborate with you. I want you to know you have freedom every single time to collaborate, which means I want to collaborate with you too. So we went through each of them and we actually created a custom communication code. Oh my goodness, the depths of like, oh, that's what you want. So now imagine every marriage, every partnership, every friendship, every coworker, if those that you spend the most amount of time with, let's say the top 3 to 5 people, imagine if you knew the custom communication code for every one of those people. The chances of you communicating well will go up. The chances of your relationship to thrive goes up.
Yeah, that's intriguing. And I'm thinking about with my wife in terms of critique. It's like there's a time and a place and a zone in which I really am. I'm eager. I'm hungry to hear, to learn, to understand. And I've even asked explicitly, directly, what can I do that will help you feel most loved? Which is funny because like that's me. It's like it's my heart as a husband and as a strategy consultant. At the same time, it's like, because it's true. We have finite time, energy, attention, resources. Like I really do want to know what's gonna have the most bang for the buck.
Yeah.
But it's because I care about you, not because I am a optimizing robot. So there are times in which I'm really hungry to know that. And there are times in which it's like, you know what? I'm really not in the mood to hear that right now. I don't recall asking for your input on how I made this popcorn.
That's right. Yeah.
So yeah, I guess there's an example right there with my communication code for a critique is that I don't want the critiques to come unexpectedly, impromptu, out of nowhere. I want them to come in, hey, let's do some reflection about where we can improve and grow and do better. And then it's like, again, I'm like, game on. Yeah, I'm anxious. I'm raring to go in those contexts. But when I'm thinking about something else, have a different set of expectations, I'm quite irritated by it.
That's right. No, you just said it. And the better you get at it, the more you try, it becomes natural. It doesn't become so rhythmic. And so then it just kind of weaves itself in. And then sometimes I'll say to my wife, hey, remember, I'm needing a little clarity before critique. So now I'm just giving a little hint. I'm like, oh, yeah. You're right. Okay. So let me ask it again. And so that's because, again, it comes back to, are you an external processor or an internal processor? So that you've got extroversion and introversion, you've got thinking and feeling. All of these dynamics are at play between two people. Add in kids, add in a team. Now the complexity is there. And if you can create common language and you start realizing every communication has an expectation and every expectation has a code. Got it. What is the code? Solve the code, solve the relationship. It's not always works out that way when it comes into mother-in-laws or people who have narcissism or other issues. But it's still the idea that it makes relationships better.
And I like the way you said that in terms of, hey, as a reminder, I'm looking for this and then that, which comes across as much more friendly than, I think what you meant to say was this. It seems like you can provide that input in a very gentle, kind, friendly, non-accusative kind of a way, which will hopefully be received fairly well most of the time, I'm guessing.
Totally. That's right.
All right. Well, Jeremie, tell me anything else you want to make sure to mention before we hear about some of your favorite things.
I think we're great. It's been fun to be with you, Pete. Appreciate it.
Oh, yeah, you too. All right. Well, let's hear about a favorite quote, something you find inspiring.
Don't despise small beginnings.
And a favorite study or experiment or bit of research?
I'm doing research right now on fear-based performance and what fear-based performance does inside teams, organizations, but also fear-based living and what it does to your body and where most of our health problems are coming from heart attacks to arthritis and so forth. It's very interesting.
All right. And a favorite book?
The book I've reread, it was The Second Mountain by David Brooks. It was a really good book. The concept is there's a first mountain that everyone's trying to climb. And most people, once they get to the top, are like, was that it? And then there's the second mountain. It's maybe my age. I'm 52. I believe that 55 to 72 are the influence years of life. For a productive individual, those are the most influential years. So I'm preparing for that 55 to 72 run. And the second mountain gave me a really good context for that.
And a favorite tool, something you use that helps you be awesome at your job?
I do this thing every day. It's called the Examine. I do it at 5:30 every day on the way home, usually from work or wherever I'm at. And what I do is I do three things. I look backwards and go, what was I grateful for today? I'll text that person usually. Second, where was I off? Where was I not at peace today? And I go after it. What was my tendency? What's my pattern here? What happened? Why did I wake up on the wrong side of the bed? And by doing that, I've figured out I have 32 tendencies. And they're interesting. Being defensive, oversharing, tendencies to name drop, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, what's done for me is it's allowed me my evenings to go better because I keep short accounts. And I don't let things build up anymore like I used to. So every single day, I'm kind of like, yep, good, put that to bed. And then I think about my schedule the next day. Am I ready for it and prepared for it? That's the last thing I do. So that has helped me tremendously be at peace at night, sleep better. I wake up more energized. That's my tool.
All right. Is there a key nugget you share that really seems to connect and resonate with folks that quote it back to you often?
Yeah, it's something I always say to people, and it's really about limiting beliefs, and it's who says you can't?
Okay. And if folks want to learn more, get in touch, where'd you point them?
JeremieKubiceck.com. It's JeremieKubiceck.com. That's my speaking site or Giant Worldwide. So giantworldwide.com is what our main business is.
All right. And do you have a final challenge or call to action for folks looking to be awesome at their jobs?
Yeah, I think for each of you who are learning today, it's like realize communication is a process. It's a journey. It's not a one-time transaction. And if you want to get really, really good at it, you'll start to think about the other person more than just yourself. What is it that they need right now? What are they wanting? What's the expectation? Use the code words. When you do, you'll start seeing breakthroughs happen, and just keep staying consistent at it. And that's what I'm excited about.
All right, Jeremie, thank you. This is fun. I wish you many lovely communications decoded.
Thank you, mate. Appreciate you, Pete.
Oh, that is so good and so handy, having a simple categorization. Are we looking to celebrate, to care, to clarify, to collaborate, or critique? Oh, let's get on the same page and not have an unpleasant misalignment of expectations, which is no fun for either. Great stuff from Jeremie. The show notes, the transcript, the links to items that we've referenced are found at awesomeatyourjob.com/EP926. Hope to catch you next time, and peace.
Thanks for listening. To get the most out of the show, we recommend 2 key things. First, check out the extra resources at awesomeatyourjob.com. You can find this episode's transcript and links, as well as the perfect episode for your situation. You can search the full text transcripts of hundreds of episodes or explore episodes tagged by topic and competency covered. Second, subscribe to the podcast and get future episodes automatically. You can subscribe by telling Siri and several other smartphones and speakers, subscribe to the How to Be Awesome at Your Job podcast, or by tapping subscribe in your podcast player of choice. If you'd like some extra help figuring out podcasts and how subscriptions work, visit awesomeatyourjob.com/subscribe for guidance. Hope to catch you on the next episode of How to Be Awesome at Your Job.